Recording in progress.
All right, well, we're recording, Patrick, so we should start.
We are recording. I suppose that means we're live.
We're live.
Yes.
Cool. Welcome, folks, to this is the OK Housing Crew session number 2 of our Lunch and Learns. The OK Housing Crew stands for Ottawa Kent. I'm very creative in my name. Okay, so that's why we're called OK Housing Crew. And so whatever the history is, we could screen share where I was during our last session, but you just don't want to see me with my face swollen up because that's where I was. But I'm Dave with Disability Advocates.
And I'm Patrick, part of Disability Advocates as well.
And today's session is, as the screen says, building great communities with zero-step universal design. And we're going to wander through a PowerPoint as well as our Home Accessibility Center, which is the space that Patrick and I and a few guests in the studio audience who are here with us. There's the studio audience. So if you're here or on your Zoom, don't hesitate to turn your mute off and ask questions or put it in the chat, whatever you want to do. We have a couple of ringers in the audience because Bruce and Dave with Adaptable Homes, they are great community partners. They do this kind of stuff. They do it too much because they're too busy to like when you call and ask people for favors, or you ask them to do the job because we have grant money. They're too darn busy, but it's great that they're here with us today. So anyways, we're here, right, Patrick?
We are here.
And let's click the slide forward.
Let's click through. I think we've got a bit of a background slide, so just to ground into who we are as an organization. I'm pretty sure for the folks in the room and some of you online, you're aware of our organization and what we do. But just as a bit of a refresher, we were founded in 1981 as a Center for Independent Living. And by virtue of being a nonprofit center for independent living, that means that we are who we serve. At least 51% of our staff and board, and I think we're much higher than that today, and very proud of that. Has at least 51%, but as I said, much higher, has at least some form of disability. So as we like to say, we are who we serve. Our service area spans Kent, Ionia, Montcalm, Mecosta, and Osceola counties. And we work alongside individuals with disabilities. And that keyword alongside is very important because we're not prescribing this is what we should do for the disability community. We're getting that first-hand input from the individuals we serve to create accessible and welcoming communities and opportunities for those individuals as well.
And our sister organization, Disability Network Lakeshore, is also in the house. They're hence the Ottawa Kent Housing Crew. So Disability Network Lakeshore is Ottawa and Allegheny counties. And so they are just like us, but in Ottawa and Allegheny counties.
So we thought we'd start with this kind of fundamental grounding question, because I think we get questions sometimes as, well, is there really a need for accessible housing? Why are we here? So to really start there, going into our next slide, we hope to show you why we are indeed here and why this is important. So I think this is a great graphic to really summarize that need. You think about the large and growing number of people with disabilities in this country. 1 in 4 Americans report having a disability, and yet if you look at the companion graphic there, less than 1%, far less than 1% of homes are wheelchair accessible in the US. And we'll acknowledge there that not everybody with a disability needs a wheelchair accessible home, but I think it's still a very good graphic in pointing out the great need or the great incidence of disability in this country, and yet the mismatch in housing supply that we have.
0.15%. Again, I mean, as we develop this slideshow presentation, we should probably have that as an audience participation, reveal, because again, 0.15%, so that's one, or it's 15 out of 1,000, so no, it's 15 out of 10,000, it's 1.5 out of 1,000 homes are wheelchair accessible. And so I'm an amateur marketer, so don't try this at home. Even if you don't have a wheelchair user living with you, you have family, friends, and refrigerators that can come in the front door or a zero-step entrance. So, hey, Steve, welcome. Come on, grab a chair. So again, Judy, who's on our staff, would greatly harass me if she was in the room, point out my error, because my home is 100% inaccessible to Patrick. I live in a 110-year-old home, 7 steps at the front door. And so my friend Patrick can't visit me at my house. I have family members. My mom, as she was aging with her disability, she couldn't come visit. And I have moved the refrigerator in both the front door and the back door. Let's just say it would have been way easier with a zero-step entrance, as we've all experienced. So you can steal that slogan if you want it, but family, friends, and refrigerators, if you don't have a disability that requires, air quotes, requires a zero-step entrance, it still should be the way you build homes, hence our pitch for universal design for all homes.
And really kind of putting an exclamation point on the market need, if we go to the next slide there, this need, as unmet as it is currently, it's only growing with natural aging, right? We see the US Census graphics showing the rapid nature with which, and the rapid speed with which this country is aging. And so, as we know, incidence of disability increases naturally with natural aging. And so we know that even, this unmet need today is only likely to grow as well, with this basket of changing needs as a country demographically.
And another quick statistic, Michigan is one of the fastest aging states. So if you are watching us from Michigan, there is a growing need in our state. Again, we're fastest aging in that we have, in the next 10 years, we'll have the most percentage of seniors as part of our population than any other state.
And going next here, this just shows, I thought this was an interesting study to point out, and it's from our own University of Michigan here in state. It shows that 88% of those folks surveyed believed in the importance of aging in place in their homes, being able to remain in their homes as their needs change and as they age. But yet, we still see a gap in consideration given to modifications needed to remain in their home. So thinking about only 15% of the folks surveyed said that they've given a lot of consideration to modifications that they would need to remain in their home, and the numbers go on from there in terms of some, little, and none. So just really important, again, underscoring that market need. We talked about changing needs, but then really the awareness piece. Even people that want to age in place, there's still a lot of education that needs to be done to successfully do so.
Here's some statistics from the National Association of Home Builders and some of their research. The most important piece, all the different parts and pieces of this don't necessarily worry about, but it's that when people are remodeling bathrooms today, they understand that they have a need where this says, that people are preparing for special needs to arise, so that 44%. And people understand that all of us are aging in place. And it's just some of us are more aware of our aging than others. We'll leave that at that. But again, looking at people are taking that into consideration, and then the list on the right-hand side just showing different features that people are incorporating into their projects. The biggest is grab bars, non-slip flooring, a curbless shower. We'll show some examples of that. additional lighting. We'll joke about that because Patrick's gonna bring some additional lighting. ADA compliant toilet, we're gonna talk about the myth of ADA and housing. Wheelchair accessible doorways, so widening doorways, lowering vanity heights, and then lowering the fixtures. The most important note, and as we get ready to dive into codes and all of that, is if you're remodeling for yourself, it isn't just a shameless plug for you, for us to say, you need to come out and talk to our home accessibility team. You need to talk to Patrick or Jackson, who's our accessibility specialist, because if you're building, if you pull the ADA, just for no other reason, is you grab the ADA accessibility guidelines, and it tells you what you should do in bathrooms and things like that, and heights of ramps, what have you. There's a high likelihood that you're going to build something that's inaccessible for you. Because I would imagine, in fact, that you've encountered ADA compliant places that don't work for you.
Exactly. So it's really about that individual customization and thinking about those individual needs. So Dave mentioned working with our team. Other important team members that we have at your disposal is they come from our wonderful OT team as well. So being able to assess individual needs, think about what your routines are in your daily lives, how to maximize your independence, and how to then come up with features that help to maximize that independence on a daily basis.
Absolutely, because when our friends at Link Up who are on the screen with us are developing a 20-unit building, they are going to comply with codes because they don't know who's coming in, who's going to lease that space. And when they do lease the space, they might then still work with our team to add a few grab bars because you don't know what that individual person's need is. Again, without getting too far ahead of ourselves, if it's a type A unit in the building code, they may have some grab bars already installed, but then a type B unit, type C unit won't have grab bars, or even a standard home won't have grab bars because they're not required. And then even if you put a grab bar in at that, is it 32? What's a grab bar?
36.
36 inches, but little range there. So if you put a grab bar at 36, maybe you need a grab bar that's up and down, not required by the code, but you need it. So again, if it's your home, you're going to use it a number of times during the day. You're going to want something that meets your needs, as opposed to the ADA. If you're a person with a disability, you've probably experienced that out in the world, that an ADA accessible bathroom at a bar or a restaurant may not be able to meet your needs. Now, of course, there's places that are way short of that. And if you have those issues, call us too, because Jackson enjoys going out and advocating with local businesses that might not comply with the ADA, allegedly. But that's a whole other video we'll do.
Yeah, so we wanted to compare and contrast a set of terms here, because I think oftentimes, as we're talking about both commercial and residential accessibility, you hear a lot of different terms, but they carry very different meanings when it comes to accessibility. So we have, just to review here, we have visitable, adaptable, barrier-free, and universal design. And visitable is one that we've heard, I think, even more about, especially in the residential realm. So we'll dive in with our next slide to really hone in on what visitable looks like. So when you hear about a visitable home, it's typically referring to 3 core features, right? And so it really speaks to what the name in itself is very descriptive in terms of allowing your home to simply be visitable by someone with a mobility disability. And this is really, there's a temporary aspect to this, right? So a 0-step entrance without a step threshold that is on an accessible path to travel from the street, sidewalk, or driveway. So that accessible path has no steps. It's at least 36 inches wide, and it's not steeper than 5% in terms of grades for walkways, or 1 in 12 for ramps. The next feature is that we have at least 32 inches of clear space in terms of clearance for ground floor doorways. And then the third feature, and the hallways actually provide 36 inches of width, so some additional width beyond the doorway clearance there. But again, allowing someone with a mobility device to enter your home. And then the third feature is access to a ground floor bathroom. Doesn't mean that this has to be necessarily a fully accessible bathroom, but they have to be able to use a bathroom on the ground floor, so it can be either a full bath or a half bath, depending on the environment. But that's really kind of the base level of accessibility that we see in a home environment. Simply allowing someone, they may not be able to stay with you long term, but simply allowing someone to visit using those three core features.
And if every new home in America was built visitable at a minimum, and if every existing home was magically made visitable as I just click my finger, we probably would only be half happy, because we probably, if we had the genie making the one wish, we probably would go to the bottom at universal design, because and as a spoiler alert, you'll see further on down that creating the zero-step entrance when you're building new is the most expensive add-on cost. Okay, so to create a zero-step entrance and what you have to do with the foundation, and we'll talk more about that later on. So from our perspective as disability advocates, if you're going to build something visitable, it's our argument that it will cost you nothing more to go to either barrier-free accessible or universal design. So again, if you're gonna make it visitable, you might as well add that, because and you're gonna see that we have a bathroom here that Patrick can get into. Then what does he do? You know, what does that mean, that he can go into the bathroom? You know, but if you and it's not, we're not talking about huge amounts of space. And again, we're going to show you that a few more PowerPoint slides before we start wandering around. So that's our little bit of tangent advocacy there.
So then, kind of ratcheting it up, I guess you could say it's kind of on a spectrum. So visitable is kind of the first level of home accessibility that we see. Moving on to adaptable. So one of the main facets that contrast adaptable from visitable is an adaptable space may not be readily accessible when a person first is looking to occupy that space, but it has certain features built in that allow you to add accessible features beyond visitable. So a couple of them, a couple of the main ones that are there. So we have parallel approach. So you may not be able to get under the sink as a wheelchair user, but you can at least, there's enough space to pull along the side of it and still use the sink from a parallel standpoint. Removable base cabinets to allow you to then get under the sink. And then also blocking for future grab bars. So if you need grab bars as you age, as your needs change, whatever the circumstance may be, there's a potential to install those easily because we've got that blocking there in an adaptable unit.
And quick, go back 1 second. Adaptable is, for those following along at home with a copy of the International Construction Code in front of them, these are type B units. So these are units that comply with the Federal Fair Housing Act accessibility guidelines, which eventually got connected to the building code as type B units. And the code talks about when type B units are required or not. That's another training. If you have any questions about type B units, let us know, or like when they're required. Again, way far in the weeds for today's purposes.
And then moving on to universal design, and this is kind of our, I guess you could say, at least our gold standard framework. One of the key things about universal design that's often misunderstood or not known is that there's typically not a set of standards per se when it comes to practicing universal design. It's simply a set of considerations. It's a broader philosophy that gets us thinking through designing either environments or projects to be usable or adaptable by all people to the greatest extent possible, without the need for any add-on adaptation or specialized design. So that's the key, is that, you know, the accessible features that people need and can take advantage of are already built in. It's not done as an add-on or a renovation, it's already got those features embedded that someone can naturally use and take advantage of as needed. And this is Ron Mace. He's an architect credited with founding Universal Design, or the concept of Universal Design. So we will, if you go to the next slide here, it'll show, we'll go into how this, you'll see how this is more of a framework. So it's not a set of concrete standards that, something must be at a certain height. It's telling you to think about these things as you're designing. So we have 7 principles. Things like equitable use. Can everybody enter in the same way? Or, is there typically, I think one of the accessibility mistakes that we see is a ramp is around the back, around the side, and someone with a disability using a mobility device has to enter differently, right? So thinking about equitable use, can everybody enter the home same way? Flexibility of use, are there, is there a variety of ways that someone can use, whether it's a bathroom, a bedroom, even down to a feature of the home, simple and intuitive use, especially with home controls and things of that nature. If you have maybe an intellectual disability or English isn't your first language, are you able to use this set of controls? When we talk about perceptible information, the next one down here, do our features use a variety of different sensory abilities that we have? So maybe if you're blind or low vision, can you rely on other senses such as ability to use tactile surfacing, things of that nature, to glean the information that you need in navigating space? If we think about things like non-slip flooring, does it have tolerance for error, right? We'll talk a little bit later about things like lever handles. Those are low physical effort for folks with limited dexterity, and they can open doors easily. And then kind of the last one there, which is probably the easiest to see in some of these pictures, is size and space for approaching use. So accommodating different mobility devices, whether it's wheelchairs, walkers, what have you, in terms of the different devices available.
And so long ago, we took these 7 principles and clicked through, and this, we're not going to go through the whole here, but this is a 1-pager that just shows what we need, what we as disability advocates mean as universal design. Because a lot of people would say, well, what do you mean? And we're like, well, there's these principles, and most folks either are too busy or they're like, just help us figure this out. So this is a quick 1-pager, but then at the end of our presentation, we'll show you our 0-step guidelines, which is something you can get at really low cost, if not no cost, that will show you our recommendations in detail to create the most universally designed space for yourself, your family, friends, and refrigerators. Look how I worked that in there. So click through, and we talked about the tour, but I forgot to warn you all, the tour actually starts over here. So we're going to onward over here.
Well, I'm gonna stop sharing the screen. And oh, you are, I don't know why it keeps going to your face. I very much apologize. Okay.
Two participants.
Participants.
And it Laura's not the host, we are, so let's go back to that. And see if that will let it come to us.
Because we're highlighted as a speaker, but it keeps going to her face. Anyways, I can try and make this bigger. I think I can make my own screen larger if I. Nope, that's not.
You're smoothing us. Wacky. We did all this practice and we thought we were going to go. Hey Laura, can you turn your video off to see what happens?
Okay.
Now let's go to the eye. Oh, it still shows Laura as speaker.
Interesting.
All right, well, we'll probably then have to reshoot this, so come on over,
Hide non-video
see what
participants.
happens. Yeah, there. Nobody keeps.
Wow, it likes you a lot. Okay, well,
Where to go?
ooh,
Oh, there we go. Come on over.
okay.
We don't know how it happened, but it happened.
Okay, so here we are.
So in this space, we have these great glass walls. But the reason why we started over here as part of our tour is that this threshold here is about as close to 0 as you can get it. If you're at home watching this and you have a sliding glass door, I dare you to go to your sliding glass door and realize how inaccessible your sliding glass door is. Probably from a width perspective, because sliding glass doors are notoriously less than 32 inches when you have wide open, when it's fully open. But then there's going to be the channel that those doors fit in. Now, of course, these kind of doors and these kind of channels, can you buy this for a home, Bruce? Something like this?
Yes, I believe it's Pella just came out with one 2-3 years ago. They're very expensive. But
All right.
and then you gotta do a lot more work to install them with the subboard, but they're
Right.
out there.
We're calling on Bruce
Griffforce.
Griffhorse. It's going to do a different horse. Griffhorse with adaptable homes. Bruce is a great community partner, so we'll share in the notes because this is going to land on YouTube. We'll put his contact information and website because again, a potential preferred future is that you might hire Bruce to do your remodel or your new home, and you actually come out here with Bruce and you get to play around. As I said at the ribbon cutting, if we're not breaking things, we're not trying hard enough. So come on out and break some things with Bruce, and then you're going to build that awesome universal design home. But enough about my shameless plug for Bruce. So this just shows again a beautiful 0 step. According to the ADA and the building code, if you have a more than a 1/4 inch rise, it has to be ranked. Most people don't know that because you see a lot of thresholds that are way more than a 1/4 inch with no ramp. And there's different, well, digression, there's different products out there to if you have a 1 inch threshold that to make an easy ramp. So you get a true 0 step threshold. So that's what we have here. You can see my foot beautifully moving on the screen. So now back to the PowerPoint. Enough. This is all we have for entrances. And click on through. Our camera person is juggling well. Grand Valley.
Alright. There we are. So we're seeing our 0 step garage on the screen, right?
Jump on this side, go for it. I mean, the garage, one of the myths in the building code is there is nothing in the building code that requires 1 step in the garage. Now, unfortunately, there are building inspectors out there that might be older than me that say you have to have a 1 step in your garage. Because if you fire up your vehicle, carbon monoxide is going to come in your house. And it truly is a danger. So I do not at all want to diminish or downplay the danger of starting your vehicle and again, unfortunately, people have died by that unintentionally. But here, if you're going to start your vehicle up, open up your garage door, keep the exterior door, and then your interior door keep closed. But again, this house, it's actually a 3-stall garage, and so there's plenty of space for a vehicle to come in. If you have a side, a side deploying ramp, or back to my mom, she used a walker and then wheelchair. My dad would come around. Help her out of the vehicle, and they had a ramp into their house because they have 4 steps into their house, but they've ramped it. So again, building new, a 0 step entrance like this, easy thing to do. Again, if you're thinking about it beforehand. And you build that right there.
So yeah, moving on here to entering the home, we see an example of 36-inch wide doors there. So that's kind of our minimum threshold for when we think about that visitable home. So adding that extra clearance there. If we go, we can see another example. This gets to that idea of equitable use. When we talk about universal design, this is a perfect example of it. Everybody enters the home the same way, in terms of having that ramped entrance to the front door.
And the quick thing about the side lights is that from a safety perspective, a person of any height can look out and see who's at the front door before you open it. So if there wasn't glass on the front door and you just had the little peephole or whatever the technical name for a peephole is, and sometimes you'll have a peephole at kind of, this would be 5.5 feet, and then there might be one at a lower level. But here, you don't need that. You got the full side light that's probably 6 inches up to 7 feet or so. The other thing to point out though, real quick, is that I'm gonna guess that that door hardware is inaccessible. Because, especially if you go back to the previous picture, it looks like it's something that you have to pinch with your thumb. And so, just from it's the closed fist rule to determine if it's ease of use. That if you can operate something with a closed fist, it's easy. But if you have to pinch and turn, then you can't do it with a closed fist. So it's like, even though this door is awesome, if Patrick lived there, you might have to change the hardware. Okay, or if a person, again, is whatever, doesn't have use of their hands to pinch, you would have to adjust the hardware. So, yeah, all right.
Kind of self-explanatory here in terms of, as we enter in the home, wide hallways, thinking about that clearance space for folks as they're using mobility device. Let's keep moving along
Yeah,
here.
and again, too much side, our team will tell you the best hallway in the house is no hallway in the house, because it's just not usable space. So working again with creative designers, is there a way to eliminate that? Because then you don't have to worry about accessibility on the pull side of the door and all that rot. So minimizing hallways, but if you have them, make them nice and wide.
Yeah, and this is a good example of kind of showing how those hallways transition into a nice wide interior door, again, for easy maneuvering. So we've added that extra space there. Good example of that there. So your doorways are just as important as your hallways. If you can have wide hallways but very narrow doorways, and you've limited access there as well. So just kind of those two features working in tandem. We could go to the next slide here. This really gets to that example that Dave talked about just a second ago, in terms of, and this is actually a client photo. Our OT team went out and did a home assessment, and it shows that example of that, standard door handle before. This particular client was unable to turn that as easily. And so adding that lever door handle, a very easy swap, shows how, that additional safety can be added as well with that, with the programmable lock and code there. So really kind of gaining two features in one.
All right, with the next slide, we go to, so far you really haven't seen much cool parts of our home accessibility center, but now you do. So take it away, Patrick.
All right, so
Come on over, folks.
going to be demoing. This is our kitchen space within the home living center. What we see here and what we'll talk about, delve into a little bit further with some other examples as well, is the importance of variable counter height, right? So having variable heights for different folks to use, whether you have you want to have a standing counter and cook in standing position. If you might have an ability to raise your chair, or you might like higher counters, or you might have a lower counter that you can then pull up to. You can see I have enough space here. Still having to be very careful in terms of making that turning radius. So we've kind of said, as we designed this, that We would like even more space now, kind of on the second round, but still have an opportunity to get underneath, have knee clearance there. You can see my knees fitting under, and Issa's doing a great job with the camera work there in terms of showing that live action. Couple of other features to point out. We have our appliances kind of inset here. So this is our actually dishwasher that we can show is at chair height and very easy, user friendly to pull out. We also have our oven here that, again, I am not left-handed, so I won't very easily pull this out, but actually this is our microwave oven, I'm sorry, but inset microwave there, again, just very easy chair height to be able to use. As we kind of move along the kitchen.
But about the microwave piece, because when Patrick and I were practicing, I asked him, how high is your microwave?
Right, and I told Dave that I don't have an inset microwave because I actually like it on the counter and I like to use it on the counter. And so again, it goes down to just that you may have, you know, a standard or something that you're, an example you're looking at, but if it doesn't work for your user, you know, it's not going to make sense. So your user really has to drive the day when it comes to really thinking about your design considerations. So again, that's important, you know, to talk about home assessments and really getting down to the user, meeting the user, really fully assessing their needs before we think we're designing something that's accessible. And then moving on to our next feature here, really important in terms of having a sink that can come out. And typically, although I'm not going to be able to do it here, we were just kind of training on that because we have closed again.
But make a scratch.
Becoming an issue.
Okay.
I'm gonna make a scratch. But ideally, we would have an opening here in the sink to allow, underneath the sink to allow for foot clearance for me to pull fully underneath. The sink would come over my lap, so to speak, here, so that I'm able to wash dishes, able to use the sink as needed here. We have very user friendly, and again, I'm not reaching it, but easy touch appliances here. We'll go into a few more of those considerations in later slides, but again, just to kind of show you the user friendliness that you can combine here with the sink overhang and then also easy touch appliances.
Well, and again, if Patrick is building his home, there is no reason why this couldn't be mounted over here.
Right.
I mean, if you have a sink that has the lip over the top or that edge, whatever that technical term is, it's gonna have some pre-drilled holes in the back, but they sell nice little caps to cover those up. And why not put the controls on the side, especially depending on how well you can get under the sink. Another part about this space, and you'll see it when you're on a tour, is that the floor is finished all the way to the back wall, and the front panel is easily removed with 4 screws. So that way, if you back to more adaptable home, it talks about removable cabinetry. You could mount that cabinet face all the way to the front. And of course, that's where you put your cleaning supplies. What else to put under the sink is your cleaning supplies. But then if Patrick moved into the house, you would remove that, and then the floor is already finished, so you don't have to worry about it looking junky. And then you could, you know, whatever you have to do in the back to at that time potentially insulate the pipes so that you don't want to bump into the hot water pipe or the drain with hot water coming through, because depending on the temperature of your water, it could, you know, it could burn you. 1st or 2nd degree burns. Let's show people what not to do. You got to back up there.
Yes, let's show them not to do.
So there's a quick picture that Issa was zooming in on. We leave those electric cords hanging because you would not leave them hanging in your house. If this was your house, you would have them tucked up away so that they're not in the way. Same thing with your plumbing, you would make sure that it's as far out of the way as possible. But again, we leave it hanging to show folks what not to do.
And this is kind of another feature of what not to do, as nice as this is to have. Stove top here inside, when you think about users and reaching across, obviously the stove here. Again, thinking about your user, their range of motion, how they're cooking, are they pulling parallel or are they coming underneath? Again, that's another consideration to think about. What are those safety hazards that might come about? As much as this is a very nice feature to have, does it again work for your users?
So if you had a 2-burner stove, you'd probably twist it, so it's parallel. You can get to both burners without having to reach over one. And you wouldn't have an outlet behind it either. In this kitchen, the stove top and the oven aren't usable because we need a commercial hood, because this is technically commercial space and we defeat the purpose. Plus, we don't do a lot of cooking here, but the microwave works, the toaster oven works, the toaster works. So you can come in and practice on those things. Real quick, there are other things hidden in here, like ways to access. These are all things you can add to your house even now. Putting that in, pull out drawers. In cabinets are a big feature now, but you can see at the far end, there's actually drawers. So why have open a cabinet, pull out a drawer when you can just have a drawer? And the middle drawer has plates in it and things like that.
So we will.
Oh, quick show while you're right there.
Oh, yes.
This was just installed.
Oh,
We'll
yes.
get there, but while Patrick's there.
We'll show. We have our residential grade automatic door, correct?
Yes, and this was the marketing company. You'd think I worked for it because the name of the product is Open Sesame. And so it is a residential grade power door. And so our friends at CareLink installed that for us here so we can show folks what's behind Amanda is a commercial grade door to get out into the hallway. This is residential power, even though that door is pretty hefty. Most doors in homes are a lot lighter unless you're talking about exterior doors.
All right. So moving back through the kitchen very quickly here, and we'll talk a little bit, we talked about some appliances, but in terms of showing the refrigerator, I'm actually coming back around.
Get out of the way.
Camera work, a little more difficult. I'm gonna go wide, but if you want to demonstrate real quickly, Dave, and then I'll come in.
Well, the funny thing about this, what I love telling about this refrigerator is that the interior designer that did this space with Williams Kitchen and Bath, she has her own company. She uses a power scooter. And so when we were talking about appliances, I said, yeah, a side-by-side refrigerator. And she said, no, I hate side-by-side refrigerators because for her, again, it's your house. It's what works for you is that with a side-by-side refrigerator, you open up a barrier to the cabinet. And so here you can grab stuff right out of the refrigerator and you're putting it on the cabinet next to you. And so it's just for her, that's why she likes a standard swing door and you can get wide things in it. I have a side-by-side at home and that's why my wife doesn't like it. Just what it limits what can go in it. And then the freezer on the bottom. So again, you can access the freezer and at least half of the refrigerator if you're a person in a wheelchair. And so it just, that's why we have this kind of refrigerator here. But again, you know what you like, get what you like. Because you're going to use it a few times a day.
I think we're gonna skip to directly.
Yeah, go to the share screen and let's quick show a few more images we have about restrooms. It's already 12:48. Patrick and I are men of many words. So that's why we'll fill it up and we're gonna do at least part one. As we go back to share screen, let me one more time, shameless plug, come on out to the Home Accessibility Center. We'll give you a tour, break things, try things, bring your builder, remodeler with you. So you're gonna build it for yourself.
So we'll just do a quick flip through here, you see another example, variable height counters, let's go next slide. See again, one of them is going to facility space, you see some different options there. Also have some size and space for approach and use there, next slide.
Hold on,
Oops.
don't know what that was, there you go.
But I like to show this one, this is a really cool one in terms of, this is an actual client with a before and after. Before she couldn't access her sink, now we've provided her with some knee clearance here and she's able to fully access and use her sink.
In spite of the blurry picture, look how happy she is.
So,
But she literally, she was able to use her kitchen, she loved to cook. And if you cook, you need the sink. So again, she was so happy. You can see the drawers that were added to the right of her. So again, making her kitchen more functional for herself, where this before just the kitchen setup would have been a type B unit. It would have been adaptable because she can do parallel approaches, both to the stove and to the sink. And she's like, this is my house. And so we helped her make those changes.
talked about easy reach and pull out doors, you see another example in kind of a more residential space. That's not kind of our testing lab here at the Home Accessibility Center, but somebody actually put, you know, something similar in their home. And then again, just more examples of pull out both appliances, but then also pull down shelves. You can see some of those deployed in the home. We talked about refrigerator. You know, again, it's up to your preference whether you like the side by side or the pull out.
Oh, sorry.
And yep. Talked about front mounted controls on appliances, right? So people can easily access them as they're pulling, whether parallel or perpendicular there. Front loading washer and dryer helps with that as well. Talked about switches, you know, it can be rocker switches, temperature switches, or temperature controls there as well as the faucet. So having again something that's simple, intuitive, but also flexible in terms of how people can use it. So really hitting on a couple of aspects of the universal design there. And then this one I like to show because it looks like your standard smoke alarm, but if you kind of read in closer there, it has both visual and auditory cues. So if someone, you know, is definitely hard of hearing or blind and low vision, they can use this smoke alarm there. Again, talking about perceptible information, different ways to perceive the alarm. This is an example. And now let's move to our back.
Let's move on down. All right, we got 8 and 12 back quarters for 2 long.
All right.
All right. This way.
Oh, yes.
No, he's swing around this way.
Yeah, I'm trying to stop sharing the screen.
Oh, sorry.
You're good.
To go to the.
Good.
Mhm.
All right, so one of the things here, you'll see we left this wall purposely open to show how easy it is and to remind folks as a consideration to think about blocking for grab bars. So we'll talk a little bit more, and we talked a little bit about that previously in terms of being that adaptable unit, having those blocking considerations in place already so that you can adapt with grab bars here. We see some different examples. Very decorative, doesn't have to be medical in terms of grab bars that you have, so it's supposed to be very stylish. In terms of the bathroom, I believe Dave mentioned this idea of a roll-in shower, which is very important to me as a wheelchair user, transferring in, being able to roll in, transfer to a shower chair. One of the more subtle features of a roll-in shower that we oftentimes don't think about our in-shower space really is this idea of the controls and control placement. So I think oftentimes, and this is a mistake I've seen in some roll-in showers, you might have a grab bar here across there so someone can step into the shower, but it intersects with the controls, and so it makes it difficult to both transfer in without hitting your control, really changing your temperature when you might not want to change your temperature. So again, having those controls out in the front so you can adjust your temperature as you want and turn the water on as you want before you come into the shower with your handheld shower there.
We'll show pictures of this, but we highly recommend not to have built-in benches. Because especially if you're buying a prefabricated unit, the benches are almost unusable, and then they get in the way of a shower chair that actually meets your needs, or if you need a transfer bench. And a lot of times the built-ins are way over here, and if you're a person that is a wheelchair user, you're gonna have high likelihood of you don't have the balance to be able to reach across to use the controls, let alone grab the shower. So with the space, or is even limited space, you can move the chair where you need it and want it, as opposed to the built-ins. And then, of course, yeah, I mean, just from a drainage perspective and what have you, that's what we recommend. But again, it's your house, you can do what you want.
Moving into kind of a.
Lights.
What?
Oh, yeah.
Like-
Additional lights. Improvising here for viewers online.
Thank you, Lisa, for reminding me.
Yeah.
Yes, thank you for the reminder, Lisa. So, moving into kind of to our toilet space here, really the key thing to highlight, is this idea of variable height toilets. I think too often folks forget that there's something called a comfort height toilet. It's a higher toilet that you can install and use to make, transferring, but also, seated comfort easier and more attainable, in your bathroom. So this is example, you can see a side by side of standard height versus comfort height. Also see, again, another example of the fact that grab bars and your toilet paper holders, things of that nature can be decorative. They don't necessarily have to be medical in nature when we think about accommodations like this.
Hey, Patrick, how come toilets are so short as standard height?
We were actually just talking about this today, and
Funny things we talk about.
as we studied today and learned today, it's that, people back then, when toilets were first being conceived and thought about and invented, were shorter by nature. And so we talk about things that don't change, and we, things that we do because we've always done them. It's kind of continued as having this shorter standard toilet height, when really more of the population we're seeing, as our population grows and gets taller, more and more people benefit from these higher comfort height toilets.
And I do wanna point out, it looks like they're the same height because that one has a cushion, like added
Right.
height on it.
Right, and so there's different products to add both. The grab bars, the one on the left is a very sturdy when it's fully tightened in. Very, very sturdy, and so our team really likes using those. The one on the right is a little more rickety.
Mhm.
I don't know if that's the technical term, but it's rickety. Sometimes you'll see them that's totally mounted on that raised height toilet seat. As at least this one is on the ground, so it's gonna have a little more stability. And then the other thing, our team really likes that raised toilet seat. Or quick sneak in, because it actually goes up, so you can clean underneath it. A lot of times, the older models like attach up underneath, so you have to unscrew it to clean underneath it. And so yeah, different ways of doing things, either modifying after the fact or put it in the comfort height to begin with.
All right, let's move on to our bathroom space. And
As Patrick's gonna show you, we built an inaccessible bathroom. And the main reason we built an inaccessible bathroom is the team demanded it, because if you come in here and practice using different transfer benches or products, and then you go home and you practice in the rolling shower and you go home to this, which is a standard bathroom, and I'll climb in here as much as you can to see it, folks, that it's just not gonna make sense to you. So you're gonna want to practice, if this is what you have at home, come here and practice like what you have at home. And what do people have at home, Patrick?
people have at home typically this very standard bathroom, which, as you can see, doesn't allow me to have necessary clearance, so it can make use very hard, especially if you're now navigating using a wheelchair. And so one of the other embedded beautiful pieces of this space is that it's adaptable in terms of showing just one of the things that can be done in bathrooms when we're thinking about adding additional space. So if Dave can pull out, so this is actually what you're seeing is, I think it's about what, Dave, 12 additional square feet of space, right?
Yep.
And it is, and the reason why it was designed this way is that typically a lot of times folks will have a closet that's adjacent to their bathroom. And so if they're able to knock out that closet and expand a space to create a more accessible bathroom, that's allowing for better experience here. Again, not perfect, but still giving me a bit more space in terms of being able to turn around and navigate a previously inaccessible bathroom.
And when Patrick was first in the bathroom, that was a visitable bathroom if the door swing was into the hallway. Because again, building code, we had to put it this way. And so again, you see a visitable bathroom. What does Patrick do when he gets in there? And so you just add that little bit of more space and it's now accessible for Patrick as a visitor, but then also imagine 2 spouses and 2 kids in a standard bathroom. Now 2 spouses and 2 kids with a little more space in the bathroom. Of course, if you're building new, the tub would be shifted over. Is it a step in or even a roll in? Again, that would probably be version 2, or maybe we'll do part 2. We get Bruce really showing us how to do 0 steps. Now that we know how to take our camera and follow you around somewhere, you know, but again, it's all of these different things, again, with this roll-in shower, just the drainage and stuff that you have to do, because again, most showers are up with that lid and what have you. So anyways, all that gets figured out. Now we can wander out. I think that's the end of the tour, right?
That's the official end of the tour, and I realize we're running close on time here, so we'll do some.
Close on time for those who are at home, but we're also under an hour because we started a couple minutes late. So we're gonna wander through a few slides and just for the recording purposes,
No.
and we'll be good.
Right.
Cool.
So in terms, and this is kind of a review of the features that we already talked about. So in terms of some bathroom considerations, again, thinking about whether you need them today or not, thinking about the wall reinforcement for future grab bars, it's much easier to put that reinforcement in place so that you can then install grab bars as needed.
But again, really, I mean, there it shows this is what's required by a type B unit is only to have that band of reinforcement. That's why we recommend a 1/2 or 3/4 inch sheet of plywood from floor to ceiling, because then you can put a grab bar anywhere and you don't have to worry about finding a wall stud, because you can mount into that much plywood and you don't, again, you don't have to find something secure and worry about ripping the wall out. So again, that's the difference between our bathroom and what you just saw on the screen.
Then again, talking about the importance of a walk-in or roll-in shower, right? With your, and you see a good example of having the controls near the bench seat there for that individual. That's the configuration that they liked. So again, just seeing another example of that in a home space that's not just the home accessibility system. Going on to the next one. And this is, I think this is a really cool picture because it shows something that's previously inaccessible with the tub, how we were able to assess and help a client make something that is more accessible with having a roll-in shower there.
But if you go back, it shows again, there's not a built-in here for a bench, because you can have that shower chair movable. But now if we click forward to the next one, it does show there is a bench built in. However, this homeowner knew to have those controls, as Patrick already pointed out, that you could easily reach those controls from sitting on that bench. So again, this person, this was a custom home. They did it the way they liked it.
We talked about offset control, so I don't need to go into too much of that again. But in terms of, you can, this is a good example because it also shows controls on the tub situation. If you prefer a tub and are able to get into a tub, you can see offset controls to be able to set the temperature according to your wants and needs, and then transferring accordingly. Toilet height, again, pretty self-explanatory, but just as a review, this is actually the very toilet in the home accessibility center compared to more of a comfort height toilet that you can see is even available in a Kohler ad. So just something, an additional consideration to think about as you're picking out toilets. We have an easy approach sink, again in the home there. They've, sacrificed maybe some cabinet storage, but it does allow for that pulling, rolling right underneath that sink to be able to be fully used.
As well as the floor space for the turning radius, because if you noticed in our bathroom, Patrick couldn't spin around because our vanity goes right to the floor. And so if this was our vanity, Patrick would have had the needed floor space to do his turning.
Real quickly through bedroom consideration, we don't have many of those by comparison.
Yes. Those that are here can see blue tape on the floor. We're gonna actually, in the next month or two, we're gonna be installing a closet unit just to show some adaptable features for a closet and some bed things. So those who are here today, come back in 2 months and you'll see even more stuff.
Lights off. Now we don't need the lights, right? Thank you, Issa, for the reminder.
Yeah.
So as Dave said, this is more, the examples you're seeing on the screen, they're more of a placeholder for now in terms of looking at pull out shelves, looking at some adjustable height shelves. You can use like a reacher or whatever you may have, at your disposal, or whatever you may like to use in terms of being able to access those additional shelves and your items on those shelves. Thinking about one of the things that's kind of underappreciated, the windows that are easy to reach, whether sitting or standing. So you see the window sill there, and able to, a wheelchair user can easily access those. And then moving kind of to the ultimate myth of this, myth busting, I guess, to foreshadow of this presentation. You may be asking the question, but isn't all of this design is great, but isn't it substantially more expensive to design accessibly, and especially when you think about universal design? And the answer is really no. Another great community partner, Heartland Builders, actually did some of these numbers in terms of incorporating some of the features that we talked about today, in terms of new construction price ranges for each change order. When we think about new construction, and we look there, that we look at an additional $2,100 to $2,800 there in terms of additional cost for some of these key features, and that will shrink even further when we go into our next slide and we look at the fact that if you think about the cost of long-term care and the consequence of not having some of these features at your disposal and having to age in place, not being able to age in place, having to age elsewhere in a long-term care facility, those initial considerations and costs are